Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at building this NH34 Sprite GMT. As per usual, I've laid out all necessary components for the build. Starting off here is our 40mm case, followed by our oyster style bracelet. Next is some spring bars, our green and black GMT bezel insert, our Mercedes handset, the green GMT hand, and last but not least, the NH34 movement. So as we get started here, just wanted to mention that this is another commission piece, this time coming from Mr. Jacobson. Just wanted to say thank you to him for supporting the watch building business and these videos. Not a ton of backstory to go with this watch. Mr. Jacobson reached out to me after seeing a few of my videos and stated he wanted a Sprite GMT, however he wanted the crown to be on the right side of the watch. So we discussed a few more details and just like that, the build was on. So starting off, I'm going to take the movement out of its packaging and place it upside down in my movement holder, firmly tightening the jaws down here so that it cannot escape. Here I'm just giving the movement a few extra turns to make sure that the mainspring is fully wound. And next I'll get the Timegrapher set up so that I can regulate the movement. Looking to get within -4 to +6 seconds here. I never quite know how to film the regulating of these movements, so we're going to try something a little different here and use a picture-in-picture view to show both adjusting the studs and what is shown on the Timegrapher at the same time. As you'll see right now, the beat error is at 1.6 milliseconds, so that first adjustment was to try to correct that. And with that adjustment, I was able to get the beat error down to 1 millisecond. You'll also notice that changing the beat error also affects the seconds per day. Just making another slight adjustment to that stud, moving it just a little bit to the left, and I'm able to reduce the beat error down to 0.5 milliseconds. Here comes another adjustment. There is a slight delay between when it is adjusted and when the Timegrapher reads a change, so be wary of that. And with one final adjustment, I was able to get the beat error down to 0.1 milliseconds. So after adjusting the beat error to an acceptable level, I went ahead and started adjusting the other regulating stud that affects the seconds plus or minus per day. Once I was comfortable with that, I went ahead and tested the movement in 5 different positions and took the average of those readings. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, I seem to have misplaced that data and thus will not be able to give an accurate assessment of what I was able to get the seconds lost or added per day down to. However, it would have been between -4 seconds per day and +6 seconds a day. So now with the movement keeping pretty good time, I'm going to go ahead and take it out, flip it over, and place it dial side up into the movement holder. And with this being an NH34 movement, the first task on the list is to get the dial washer out of this bag and place it over the center pinion of the movement. When the dial washer is placed on the pinion, it should resemble a U, as in uranium, not an M, as in Mancy. Shout out to all the Archer fans watching these videos. With the dial washer now in place and facing the correct direction, I can now look into getting the dial seated. I'm once again using my favorite black enamel relax parity dial for this build. Here I'm just identifying which dial foot needs to be removed before taking the dial off screen and clipping the foot off. And then replicating the process on this side, however this time clipping it off in view of the camera. I'm actually going to skip ahead here a little bit in the process. The filing down of those little nubs took longer than usual this time, and I didn't want to bore you guys with that in the video. So I'm going to move right along into getting the dial set, and we'll look into setting the hands here in a second. Now with this being an NH34 GMT movement, the first hand I have to set is the GMT hand. Getting it out of its packaging, you'll see that it's the standard arrow-shaped GMT hand, this time with a green accent, and it is loomed with BGW9. Again here, making sure the watch is fully wound before pulling the crown out to the third position to set the hands to midnight. And so it begins. It's critical to get this GMT hand lined up straight as an arrow, as failure to do so will leave the remaining hands misaligned. So you'll see me taking my time and making plenty of little tiny adjustments just to make sure that it's dead on. I'm happy with it. Looks like I'm happy with it here. I'm going to take out the hand setting tool and push gently but firmly on the center of the hand. Setting this hand can be difficult as it does sweep over the indices, and with the indices sticking up a little bit higher than I'd like, we want to make sure that it doesn't make contact with those, but also lays far enough down to not make contact with any of the hands sitting above it. And as always, I'm going to check for clearance by rotating the hand all the way around the dial and making sure that it does not make contact with any of the indices. It will also show at what point the date flicks over, indicating midnight. At this point, we're pretty close to midnight with the GMT hand, so I'm happy with that, and we'll move on to setting the hour hand. So once again, using these polished stainless steel Mercedes style hands for this build. These hands are also loomed with BGW9. Gonna crack the case open here, and it looks like only the minute hand was able to defy gravity this time. So just like before, using plastic tweezers here to set the minute hand on its pinion, being very careful not to scratch the dial. You're just moving it ever so slightly so that it lines up exactly with 12 o'clock. Looks like it's lined up pretty straight here. I'm going to break out the hand setting tool, press down firmly but gently, and then check for clearance. Looks like the hour hand sweeps around without making contact with the GMT hand below it, and the date flicks over right around midnight. We're good to continue. Coming up next is probably my least favorite hand to set, especially with the GMT model, the minute hand. And I'm off to a great start with it, immediately flipping over and rotating 90 degrees on me. But it's no issue, just use a little bit of Rodico to pick it up, and we'll try again. Here, similar to how I set the seconds hand, I'm using the Rodico to hold the minute hand in place before pushing it down onto the pinion with the tweezers. I promise I was not drunk while trying to set this hand, but I hope you can now see why the minute hand is my least favorite hand to set. Here I've conceded and moved the movement closer to myself to hopefully get that hand set. Pressing it down into place here. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, it has fallen off the pinion. Through patience comes perseverance, and I believe that this is the actual time I have set the hand. We're looking pretty good here. Looks like none of the hands are fouling up on each other, and the date is flicking over right about 2 to 3 minutes after midnight. So I'm very happy with that. The minute hand was slightly angled up, just a little bit too much, so again breaking out the hand setting tool to push it down just a little bit to give that seconds hand a bit more clearance. And again, just checking for clearance and to make sure that the date is still flicking over right around midnight. And with the minute hand now out of the way, I can move on to setting the seconds hand. Off to a great start with here falling off the Rodico, but no real issue, just pick it back up and try again. So it looks like the seconds hand is sitting on the seconds pinion. Gonna quickly click in the crown. We'll see it's ticking away, so it is sitting correctly. Gonna break out the hand setting tool and press it firmly down into place. And as always, just going to pull out the crown here and rotate the hands all the way around the dial, making sure that none of the hands are coming in contact with each other. And with everything looking good on the hand, dial, and movement, I can move on to getting the case ready. This 40mm case comes with a bi-directional bezel from the factory. With that being the case, there's no need to completely disassemble the bezel assembly to file down that little click ring to turn a unidirectional bezel into a bidirectional bezel. As per usual, just using a cleaning cloth to clean the outside and the inside of the crystal of the watch, making sure to remove as much dirt and debris as possible before casing up the movement. Just as important as having a nice clean crystal is having a nice clean dial, so I'm using the hand blower to remove any debris that may have fallen on the dial while I wasn't working on it. With the movement now flipped over and held in the movement holder, I'm going to push down this little lever that will release the crown and pull it straight out. Going to blow up the inside of the case here just to make sure there's no dust sitting on that crystal before casing up the movement. Going to place my little pad down and then place the movement dial side up onto the pad. Take the case, place that over the movement, and then we'll flip the whole thing over and case up the movement. This ended up being a pretty tight fit, so here I'm using a micro screwdriver to press the movement into place and seat it within the case. With the movement now firmly within the case, it's time to break out the crown stem and cut it down to the correct size. Starting by removing the crown from the case and threading it onto the new crown stem. I like to use my plastic tweezers to grip onto the crown stem so that I can tightly thread down the crown. And with the crown threaded on, we can place the whole thing through the case and into the movement, and then use these calipers to see how much needs to be removed from the crown stem. So just like before, I'm going to push down on that little lever to release the crown stem, pulling it straight out. You'll see that when it comes out of the case, it has an O-ring on it for some reason. Obviously that's not good for water resistance to have a missing O-ring, so I'm going to need to find and replace that before calling the watch finished. So with the crown now removed from the crown stem, I'm going to place the crown stem on my pad, line up the calipers with the end of the threaded side, and make a mark where the calipers indicate I need to cut. And here, I'll take a nice sharp pair of wire cutters, place them right on that mark, or a little above it, and snip it off. Now after making this cut, the crown stem is often jagged, making it difficult to thread the crown back onto it. I'm going to take this Dremel tool, file everything down, and cone off the crown stem in hopes of making it easier to thread the crown back onto it. It appears the crown went on nice and easy. Now I'm going to tighten it down again using plastic pliers to hold the crown stem. We'll place the whole thing through the case and into the movement and make sure we can tighten it down all the way. It appears I've cut the correct amount off the stem. I can thread the crown all the way down to the case while still being able to activate all of the functions of the watch. So with the crown stem taken care of, we can look to casing up the movement. Just going to place the case back onto the case, thread it a little bit with my hands before breaking out the yellow rubber ball to tighten it down even tighter. Then to complete the tightening process, I'll break out the Caseback tightening tool, place it into those little teeth, and give it a turn. Maybe a little bit too much of a turn. With everything looking good, movement and case-wise, I can turn my attention to the bezel insert. Again, we have a green and black 24-hour GMT ceramic bezel insert for this build. Just using some pointy metal tweezers to remove this adhesive protection ring. And just like how I lined up all the hands with 12 o'clock, now I have to line up the bezel insert with 12 o'clock. I ended up moving the case and movement a little bit closer to me just to make sure that I can line this bezel up perfectly with 12 o'clock, as once the insert is in, there's no getting it back out. And once I'm sure it's lined up straight, giving it one final press into place, make sure the adhesive makes contact with the bezel insert, and then checking to make sure the bezel still rotates both directions freely. In the final stretch here, all that's left to do is attach the bracelet, and we can call this build done. Going to separate the bracelet into two pieces here by simply removing a screw and pulling the links apart. Just makes it a little bit easier to get them attached to the case. So with the case now dial side down on the pad, I'm going to take a spring bar and run it through the end link of one of the bracelets. So just going to clean up the area real quickly. Then take the bracelet, place it between the two lugs. Get the spring bar tool out. Place one of the end links into its slot, and then using the spring bar tool, get the other one into its slot. Sometimes, even though the spring bars are within the lugs, they're not placed in the divots in the case meant for them. So here I'm just using some metal tweezers to move them around and get them to sit in those divots. With one side secure, all that's left to do is rinse and repeat on the other side. Placing the spring bar through the end link, placing the bracelet between the lugs, and then using the spring bar tool to set the spring bar. You'll see here that the same thing happened on this side, with the spring bars not falling directly into their divots. However, this time, when I used the metal tweezers to try to adjust them, I accidentally pushed too hard, causing the spring bars to fall out the other side. Not a big deal. All I have to do is place the bracelet back in between the lugs, and then use the spring bar tool to reset the spring bar. The end link's now secure. All that's left to do is line up the links in the bracelet, put the screw through them, and tighten it down. And after a quick polish, there she is, our NH34 Sprite GMT. Just want to say thank you again to Mr. Jacobson for commissioning this piece. I had a great time building it. Green is one of my favorite colors, and it's nice to finally see it on a watch I've built. I'm really happy with the way this one came out. As always, I love seeing those relaxed enamel parity dials beneath the crystal. It's great to see the crown on the right side of the Sprite GMT, and that bi-directional factory bezel has a great feel to it. I have a few more videos in the works. They'll all be along the lines of homages to the Yacht Master and the Submariner. However, after that, looking to expand and do something a little bit different with these builds. If you have any interest in commissioning your own piece and working together, go ahead and reach out to me at goldenstatewatchshop@gmail.com. Feel free to subscribe to me on YouTube and follow me on Instagram. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.